Doesn't quite work without the shades, does it? Just get them on there. So I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think that, and I think this is obvious to quite a lot of people, but I think, again, it still needs to be reiterated and said again. I think that we need a huge shift in mindset, and I think that a lot of things that we find ourselves struggling with, suffering from, to an extent, is on us. Yes, there's a history that we have. There's a lot of atrocities that have taken place. And even now, there's a lot of capturing that exists within our systems, and that's economically, politically. And, those are the controlling arms of society. And it may sound perhaps stupid for me to say that, but I think that it should be said. And if we are going to revolutionize against it, I think that it is necessary that we actually make each other aware of what's happening. There are certain things that I think, shouldn't be dealt with at an individual level. I think that, especially if you look at the landscape within South Africa and Africa as a whole, there's just a lot that I think actually even before we may have never even dealt with it individually. But also I think that now even these are not things that we should be dealing with at an individual level. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about at the basic, at its most basic, education, shelter, water, food, nourishment, that includes water. And I think mobility, also comes into there. That's in no particular order. It's just the order in which I remembered them. But I think those, at least, there may be more. Those, at least, are things that we should be figuring out as a whole, as a unit, as a society, before we get to a point where everyone has it at its basic form, and whoever wants more can then do more at an individual level. So a lot had to be sacrificed by our predecessors in the way of losing their lives, giving away a lot of their freedoms, losing loved ones, not being able to spend time with your family, but you're busy out there fighting for the liberation of a generation, or whatever it is that drove them. They sacrificed a lot in order for us to get this liberation that we have. And I, for one, am grateful for the work that they did. And yes, all the conspiracies and all the controversies may or may not exist, around all that and around the attainment of our freedom. But Nelson Mandela, in his Long Walk to Freedom, does say that, this does not mean that we now get to all drive off in Mercedes-Benzes. We still have a lot of work to do. I feel like that is perhaps something that we missed or we didn't quite get. Maybe that's a chapter that was removed in some other edition or something. But I think that we sort of missed that. We sort of started feeling like, we've made it. We can now go and drive off in these fancy cars. And that was a huge mistake. And perhaps this is an institutional thing that has been programmed into us to believe that actually we've made it and we don't need to work anymore. I believe there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think it's clear, it's very obvious there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that in addition to the work that should be done, there's a lot of sacrifice that has to take place. I think, fortunately, our sacrifice is less drastic compared to what our predecessors had to sacrifice. Let me now start putting this back into context. School is expensive. Good quality education is expensive. It's not just something that is institutionally made expensive. It's just really expensive to maintain a certain quality in terms of keeping teachers happy, having the environment, the schooling environment, that being the the classes, the grounds, and whatever, looking good and feeling good and harboring a culture of good education. It's very expensive to maintain that. But then we understand that our people can't really afford that. So as a people, should we not, if those of us who do get to a certain place, financially at least, should we not take it upon ourselves to ensure that we feed back into these institutions, I'll call them, these schools that we come from? Granted, that is what we pay taxes for. I understand that is what we pay taxes for the government to take care of that. But I think 10 years into democracy, we should have seen that, okay, no, they're not quite doing what they're supposed to do, what they promised to do. Maybe even 20 years into it. At that point, do we not then start to say, let's now change the method? When you keep doing something and you keep doing and it doesn't work, you have to get to a point where you start changing the method. Food, we have a lot of crime running rampant in this country, and it's not something that stands alone. It's not something that just exists in of itself. It exists as part of the ecosystem, and if the ecosystem struggles somewhere, you now end up having lions eating grass. People who would probably be working, who would probably be doing something, don't have those opportunities, and now they have to now come and steal and rob and kill and all these crazy things. Again, it stems back to us not feeding back into the system that is going to create an environment in which all of us are productive, in which all of us add value. And these go into to many different departments as well. But I'm getting to it. I hope I don't lose my train of thought. If you think about mobility, you find a lot of people, somebody, I want to buy this car, I want to buy that car, I want to do this, I want to do that. And sometimes we even sacrifice the education of our children for the sake of driving a certain fancy car. Sometimes we even sacrifice some of the food we eat in order to be able to afford that car and its insurance and, the maintenance and the tires and all that crap. The question I then have is, where is the sacrifice? Where is the sacrifice that we are doing, giving back to the roots to ensure that from this point of liberty that we're at least let them be at an even better place, in future? Why is it that we only worried about ourselves and our own virtues and our own luxuries? Do we not realize the opportunity that stands before us? And yes, I know it may sound hypocritical or crazy or naive. Yes, that's the word. It may sound naive for me to say that, yeah, we should be starting banks, we should be creating car brands, we should be creating cell phone brands and all these other things. But if we're not fighting for them, we're just never going to be able to break those barriers. The same way our predecessors fought for us to get here. It just looked like insanity. There's many people who said, you are insane, just come and just chill, just get a job and just stop trying to fight it. It's not, we're not going to win. But they were like, no, we're going to fight this. Why aren't we making those same sacrifices? Like, no, we need to fight this. We need to have a bank. We need to create our own car. We need to be the car central of Africa. We need to be the tech central of Africa. We don't have the land anymore. So it stands to reason that agriculture is probably not something that we can then dominate. So if we can try to maybe, okay, what can we get into then? And try to get into those spaces. But then don't get into those spaces for self-enrichment. Get into those spaces so we can build as a society, we can build as a unit, we can build as a community. And then the community becomes a stronger force that can change the status quo. But if we keep addressing issues at an individual level, I feel like that causes or perpetuates the problems that we have in society. If you think about mobility, if we were to solve mobility as a unit, as a whole, instead of trying to figure it out on individual levels, there would be a lot of families who are now able to afford better education for their kids in order to, create a better future generation. But at the same time, if we then gave back to certain schools and improved their quality, again, we have further solved an issue as a whole, that now we end up having far less issues as a whole, that you don't really have to worry about these things by yourself. That when you now elevate your life to a certain point, you can now start making certain decisions about these things at a personal level, at an individual level. So now you know that, okay, we've been helping give back to a school, and they have good quality education now. So I don't need to spend money on each and every one of my kids for them to get into school, because already a school, as we continue to give back to it, I mean, not everyone who's giving back to a school has kids going to the school. So there's like school fees that are paid for kids who aren't there. So then even if you have 3 kids, you're still giving money as if you're paying for one school fees, for one child's school fees. But then, there's other people who don't have kids there, but they're also giving back. So we now have an environment that nurtures and breeds good quality educated children. So then education becomes less of a problem for you. We try to solve nourishment for everyone, for the unit, for the community. And then food becomes less of an issue for you, becomes less of a stress for you. We try to solve mobility as a unit. We try to solve shelter as a unit. And then you now have people who are freed up to nurture a liberalized. It doesn't sound right. But then we have a future generation that grows up liberated, and truly liberated at that, because certain things that are at least the basics are taken care of. And we are now at an individual level. If I want to elevate my life further, I can. But I know that if we solve mobility as a community, me getting to work is not something I have to worry about. I don't have to worry about petrol. I don't have to worry about maintenance. I just have to worry about me getting to work, me doing the work. So that frees up my mind to think about other things, to create at an elevated level, simply because we as a community decided, let us solve mobility. If a person needs to get from point A to B, let that not be an individual problem that they have to work on. Let that be a communal solution that you can subscribe to get you there. Something like taxis, rapid bus transportation, I think they call RBT. I think that's what they call them. These things are steps towards solving mobility as a unit, and we need to be elevating that and investing more in that, so that that becomes one less thing to worry about. There's less traffic in the road as well, and we grow. Why are we afraid to sacrifice these small things for the betterment of our kids? Why are we scared to sacrifice these things for the betterment of our successors? And I think that that's where we've lost the plot. I think that we are just scared. We're hypocrites in that we had people sacrifice a lot for us, but we're not sacrificing for ourselves and for our kids, which we claim to love. We claim to love ourselves, but we're not really sacrificing enough for each other. And I find that to be, I don't know what I'm talking about, so maybe don't take me seriously, but that just doesn't sit very well with me.